Good afternoon. On this 17th day of April 2024, I'm Ross Stagnitti. Welcome to the Canastota Public Library. Today's interview is the 14th edition of Canal Town Commentary, which is a series of Canastota stories. Thanks to the generosity of Ellen and Mark Dunbar, who are filming today's interview, DVDs of the first 13 interviews are available in this building and in the Education Center on Canal Street. The Dunbars donate their time, their talent, and their resources to Canal Town. So let's show them some appreciation. Today's interview is the first to be taped in front of a live audience. The Dunbars, apparently it was Mark who made the suggestion that we use this setting after watching Center Stage on the Yes Network. But believe me, I'm no Michael Kay. The only similarity is I use large index cards. Now it's my privilege to introduce the star of today's show, our beloved library director, Liz Metzger. You're welcome. Liz, you've been deeply involved in so many educational and entertaining programs here in Canastota. You've been a longtime member of the Rotary Club. You've devoted your entire professional career to Canastota, and it seems like you've been here forever, but you're not a native.
I am not.
So would you please tell us about your birthplace, your childhood, your early education, and your family?
Very good. Well, I am a native of Kenmore, New York, which is a suburb north of the city of Buffalo. And I am the middle child of two brothers. And my wonderful parents are still living. My father is a retired dentist, and my mother is a social worker who became a very prominent social activist in Western New York. Growing up, I attended lots of peace rallies and recycling drives and things like that. I went to high school in Kenmore. That's a prominent high school. There were 800 in my graduating class. So it was very different than the community of Canastota, where my children graduated from and had only about 125 in their graduating classes. I went to Cornell University for my undergraduate degree, which was completely different than my master's degree at SU. My undergraduate work was in human nutrition, and I worked for the WIC program for a number of years, and then for Cornell Cooperative Extension, where I lived in Cortland County. I traveled around and did community nutrition education programs. That's always been a continuing avocation of mine, is health and nutrition. As a second career, we moved to Canastota in 1992 because my husband worked at the DeWitt office of Agway. And he was commuting from Cortland and wanted a shorter commute. So we looked at houses within a 30-minute radius of the DeWitt office. And I fell in love with this amazing property on Peterborough Street, part of the historic district, number 250. And it was known at the time as the Menzie House. It was built in the 1870s and was owned by the president of Key Bank in Canastota. And it was absolutely gorgeous. And I walked in the front door and said to my husband, I really want to live here. So we moved. We had a daughter at that time who was 2. And then she was joined by our son in 1993. The very favorite thing that I loved to do with my children when they were young was come to the Canastota Library. I just happened to be on the beautification committee in 1995 with a lovely friend, Lorraine Arsenault. I said to Lorraine, it looks like you need a library director. And what do you have to do to be a library director? And she said, well, you have to have a master's degree in library science. And I said, oh, darn. But then they interviewed me anyway. And very fortunate, serendipitous thing was that I don't think anybody else they interviewed was either available or wanted the job. So they said, if you get your master's degree while you're working, we'll hire you. I started on September 6th, 1995, and I also started graduate school at the same time. My daughter started kindergarten, and my son at age 2 went to daycare. And let me tell you, it has been a very happy marriage for almost 29 years, thanks to all of the wonderful people in this community.
Now, at the time you were considering this job or maybe being interviewed, you mentioned Suzanne Amlaw, who's with us today. She's seated right in the front row.
She is.
And I believe she was she the assistant librarian?
She was the assistant director of the library. And I think you were here for how many years? 18?
Yeah.
Yes. My predecessor was here for a very brief time, and I think they were without a director for a period of time, and Suzanne was manning the ship, so to speak, until they hired me. And she showed me the ropes, and she and Doc Lawson really got me off to a really great start. So, yes. Doc Lawson used to come in every day and have a cup of coffee and point out all the idiosyncrasies of this building.
Regarding your first house,
Yes.
it's painted purple now, right?
Yes. When we bought it, it was this lovely shade of cream and beige. It's changed hands a couple of times since we sold it in 2000. Unfortunately, not my favorite color, green or purple.
But my granddaughter would like to buy it.
It's fantastic
only
on
11
the
though.
inside. It has the most amazing staircase, and all the floors are different parquets, and the original gas and electric lights were still there when we lived there, and it was just stunning.
You mentioned that it was going to be torn down?
What I was told when I started working here, a gentleman named John Robinson came into the library. He had worked for the New York telephone office that has a building on Rosbach Street that's right behind that home. And he said the house was abandoned for a period of time. It was owned for many years by 2 women who were maiden ladies. And because there was no one to pass the house on to, it became empty. And then Fred and Evelyn Penna said, "We can't see it be torn down. We will buy it." And they did a lot of the restoration to it. I believe that it had, a roof leak and floor damage and lots of other things that they fixed and repaired over the years. The interesting thing about it was that one day John Robinson came in and he said, "I think these 2 items belong in your home." And he handed me a little soap dish that held your toothbrushes and a little holder that held a cup. And the bathroom on the 2nd floor in this home was paneled in wainscoting that was 3/4 of the wall oak. And these 2 little metal units screwed right into the wall, and you could see where they were missing. The screw holes were still there. And he said that it was his job when he was working for the telephone company to let people tour the house. And people just kind of unscrewed those and tried to walk out the door with them, and he caught them. Yeah. Yeah.
So
I was able to put them back in.
So you've been library director almost 30 years here
Correct.
in Canastota. My wife Kathy and I, we moved back here 19 years ago, and as soon as we saw what was going on in this library, we were worried that somebody would probably snatch you up and take you off to a bigger library system. State of New York might offer you a job, you might be on a university campus, but you're still here.
I'm still here. I know.
Why?
That's a very interesting question. My children grew up and went to school here, and my husband did a lot of traveling for his career, so it was important that one of us be local. And, I decided early on to take the advice of my wise father when he said to me, "You can jump from job to job, or you can put down roots and really make a difference." So that's what I chose to do.
And you did. Absolutely. We were away for 36 years, and when we returned, we realized how different the operation of this library was compared with when we were teenagers. For example, encyclopedias. That was the primary reason I would come here as a high school student, to use the encyclopedias.
Sure.
How many encyclopedias were there then when you started as the director, and how many are left today?
Well, we had, I think, 7 juvenile encyclopedias and probably 5 adult sets of encyclopedias. We had a whole reference room for the encyclopedias, and now we have 0, thanks to the internet. Everything changed drastically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This, I mean, it's...
that's right. That's
If
right.
I was still in high school, I would use this for research. I mean, just
Absolutely.
Google whatever you want to Google.
Absolutely.
How about magazines?
I think there were almost close to 200 magazines when I started working here. And we also had, I think, 7 newspaper subscriptions. And now we are down to about 50 magazine subscriptions. Many magazines have completely gone out of business. And we don't have any newspaper subscriptions any longer.
Including Sports Illustrated. That was a sad day for me.
That's right, that's right. We're losing magazines all the time. I love magazines. You can read a lot of magazines digitally on your computer or your phone, but it's not the same thing.
And we realized what a wide range of programs and events have been offered here at the Canastota Public Library. I'm going to mention a few because
Okay.
the list probably goes on forever. I'll mention a few, and if you don't mind, you can provide some of the details.
Okay.
And one of the items that I noticed on the list was something called Dinner in the Stacks.
Well, Dinner in the Stacks was something that was done quite a number of times when Suzanne was at the helm. We resurrected it for the anniversary of the library building when it was 100 years old, thanks to my assistant director, Tish Dickinson. She remembered them from growing up, and we tried to resurrect that. So we actually had it up here in this room where we could seat the most people, and it was catered by the Rusty Rail.
You mentioned visitations by authors, and there was one name, Diane Ackerman.
Diane Ackerman lives still, I believe, in Ithaca, New York. Her husband, Paul West, who's recently deceased, also lived there. And I'm drawing a blank as to the books you might know that she has written. But we were able to get a grant to invite her to come to the library to do a book signing and visit. And she gave us a break. I think we paid her, I don't know, we got a grant to pay it, so it was like $3,000, but her normal fee was more like $10,000. That was a big deal to have her come here. But my predecessor, one of my predecessors, Helen Sheridan, she had Alex Haley here, and he drew a crowd of over 200 people. And there's a wonderful newspaper article photo of Dr. Lawson and Mavis Tornator with Alex Haley, and Doc's got his pipe and Alex Haley has a cigarette. That sign of the times, I think it was 1967, and he was a visiting professor at Hamilton College.
You had Gary Yeomans here, who wrote the book entitled The Onion Picker.
Correct.
Which was not Carmen Basilio's favorite title, by the way, but that's the way it goes. But that reminds me, my first encounter with the library with you was connected with Carmen, because I was doing a presentation for the Mansion House, and I needed some help with PowerPoint. I didn't have the equipment. So I checked with Jeff Brophy, and Jeff said, I know just the person that would be able to line you up with some stuff. And you delivered, so I appreciate that. That was the first, and you had a lot of local authors here too.
We've tried to really showcase local authors over the year, primarily because we have 2 very active writing groups at the library, and many of the members of those writing groups have published books. So of course we've invited them to come and talk about them and have their books sold and signed. And that's been a great privilege to have the library known as a mecca for local writers.
And one of your staff members encouraged my wife to publish.
That's right.
And she's now done up to four children's books.
Yeah, number 5's being illustrated now.
Another item I saw on the list was, there was a presentation with 2 Amish elders.
That was a really memorable evening. These two gentlemen very graciously came to the library to talk about Amish life and culture. And we had standing room only in this room. I think there were close to 200 people. They only did it as a favor to one of their neighbors who had befriended them when they moved here and helped them become acclimated to the area and, you know, gave them rides and whatnot. At the end of the evening, everyone, you know, said, would you please come back? You know, can we take your pictures? And of course, they don't allow photographs, so we do not have any photos or films of that night. They said, we're very sorry, but this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. We're only doing it as a favor to our neighbor. It's very memorable. I mean, I wish I had, you know, transcribed it somehow, because these gentlemen were so gracious with sharing their culture.
And you've done some agricultural promotions here, the seed exchange program, and last year I experienced the tomato tasting.
Yes.
We had I don't know how many varieties of tomatoes that were sliced up.
That's
and
right.
Explanation of what they were. And
I am very fortunate to have fantastic folks that I work with, and one of them is Katrina McManus. And about a dozen years ago, I had read an article about libraries that do offer seeds for people. And I said, you're a gardener, what do you think of this? And she just took the ball and ran with it. And we now have over 200 people every year that come and borrow seeds from us and bring seeds back. And then to celebrate the end of the season, she asks them to bring their best tomatoes. And she is very clever in the way that she arranges them and cuts them up, and it's just delightful. So she has all the kudos for that.
how about live animal visits during the summer reading
yes.
program?
So one of the things we discovered over the years that bring people to the library are animals. And last year we had farm animals in this building, believe it or not, a miniature horse and a goat and a sheep and a chicken and I'm not sure, a cat, a few other things. But many times over the years we've had Dan the Snake Man, and people who've never set foot in this library but love snakes have come out for that, and he generally gets an audience of 100 people or more. Yeah.
And of course, Canal Side Talks. There have
That's
been many
right.
here.
Many Canal Side Talks for many, many years, and those have also drawn lots and lots of people to them. So we're grateful for that collaboration, and we hope that that continues.
Norm Dan,
Yes.
Joe DiGiorgio, he's
That's right.
in the
Joe's in
back.
the back. Norm Dan is coming next Wednesday night to promote his new book about the grandson of Garrett Smith. So we're happy to have that.
Here's a big one, Dolly Parton Imagination Library.
Yes, that is a big one. So all of you, I'm sure, know Dolly Parton. And for over 20 years, she has been very philanthropic and has provided books to children all over the world. And we are a partner with her and have been since April of 2012. We currently have over 300 local children that receive a new book every month from her. The children have to be between the ages of birth and age 5. There are no income guidelines. Anybody is eligible for it. The library does continuous fundraising because our part of the affiliation is to make sure that those books are mailed to them, so we pick up the postage for it. So it's been a really happy collaboration. New York State is now talking about having statewide participation with this program, and that they would fund half of it. So we're promoting that. We hope if you have an opportunity to see any of that legislation that you support it as well. There are, I think, maybe 20 states that do that nationwide. California is one of them. So we hope that it really makes a difference to have reading material in people's homes. One of the very sad statistics that I remembered learning early on was in the prison system. They could estimate the number of prisoners they were going to have based on 3rd grade reading test scores. If the test scores were really low, then they would have more prisoners in their system, that many years later. So just by having books in children's homes, it makes a difference in their readiness for kindergarten and their ability to read. And even though we are a very computerized society, you can't do anything on your computer unless you're able to read. we're really happy to have that partnership.
And that's been a favorite cause for my wife.
That's
in terms
right.
of her-
Your lovely wife, Kathy, has donated proceeds from all of her books to support this program that amounts to well over, I don't know, $1,200, maybe $1,500 by this point. So it's been a fantastic support that we've received from her book sales.
And you have a 3D printer here. I mean,
We
that didn't
do.
exist when
We
I was a
do.
kid.
That's a very unique piece of equipment that I have no expertise in at all, but I have some terrific staff people that can help you create something on a 3D printer. That was also a unique gift to us by a young man who, for his Eagle Scout project, he bought all the components and put it all together and gave it to the library. So, yes. A homeschooled young man who has gone on to, I'm sure at this point he's in graduate school for computer science because he was absolutely brilliant.
I stopped in the library yesterday and Justine Mulford was down in the basement with her
Caning. Yes, her
Caning
chair
class.
caning. Yes, yes. Justine has graciously shared her expertise of caning chairs with the library, which I think is probably 20 years now, maybe longer. She comes in every week for a couple of hours and instructs folks on the very fine art of learning to cane. And she taught me, and I've only done one chair, and I don't know if I'll ever do another one, but I was very happy to learn how to do it. She's a wonderful instructor.
And because of that, I was able to reconnect with my babysitter. When I was about 4 years old, Kathy was in Justine's caning class, and she said, "There's somebody that's in the class that I think knows you." And she was Cynthia Segroy at the time. And we realized yesterday that she was about 10 years old when I was about 4.
Oh, my goodness.
So she was a very young
So,
babysitter.
Cindy Reed.
Right.
Yes. So
Cindy Reed.
Cindy Reed, and in fact, we're doing a raffle right now of an antique chair that has a seat that was caned by Cindy Reed, and the proceeds of that raffle are going to go towards the fundraising we're doing for our electronic sign.
What have we left out? I mean, we could probably be here all afternoon if we did.
Well, I'm a big fan of having live music in the library, and we had the Bearcat Jazz Band for many years. And that started when Suzanne was here, and we continued it until the leader passed away. But he did it until he was about 90-something years old. They were fantastic.
It's spelled JASS.
JASS, and they played Dixieland jazz for 3 hours in this space. One of the best things I ever did was purchase these chairs, because people said to me afterwards, I could sit comfortably for 3 hours and listen to the jazz band because of these chairs.
Yeah. Well, you, your staff, the board members and volunteers have really created a community center here at the Canastota Public Library. It's certainly a welcoming place for people of all ages and socioeconomic backgrounds. And we really appreciate what you and the people that have helped out have done for this community. The history of this building, though, not this building, but this institution, dates back before the building was constructed.
Correct. So the original charter was back in 1896, and that hangs on our wall in the Carnegie Room, and it's signed by Melville Dewey, who was the secretary of the Department of Education at that time and the inventor of the Dewey Decimal System. And the library existed in one room of a home down the street. The woman who was the librarian at that time was Miss Julia Perkins. I believe they had several hundred books that could be borrowed in the room of this house that belonged to her sister, Mrs. Warwick, if I'm remembering that correctly. Of course, one room, you outgrow that pretty quickly. So the really wonderful thing that I like to think about Canastota is that the original 5 board members, 2 of them were women. That says to me that Canastota was a very progressive community. So in 1896, with 2 women on your board, they were thinking, what's our future going to be like? And one of those women wrote to Andrew Carnegie, because at that point he was giving away money for libraries, and they wrote to him and asked for a gift, and they got it. His stipulation for $10,000 gift was that the community agreed to support the library with a $1,000 tax levy every year. So the board got together and they rallied the community, and they held a vote very quickly that passed almost unanimously in the community, and they were able to get that $10,000. This building, which I think is a magnificent piece of architecture, was designed by Archimedes Russell, who was a Syracuse University architecture professor that went on to build about 800 historic buildings in the state. They signed the contract on October 15th, 1902. And they opened this building 9 months later on August 11th, 1903. If you can imagine, that was the era where women had skirts to the ground and the streets were brick or mud. The Delmonico brothers of Syracuse were the bricklayers, and they must have been laying bricks all winter long, because this building has been so well built. It's a double brick wall construction, bricks on the inside, bricks on the outside, with an airspace in between. And look how well it has served in so many capacities for over 120 years.
Well, when you mentioned that Carnegie donated $10,000, it didn't sound like a lot of money. So I went online and tried to figure out what that would be in terms of today's currency, and $360,800.
Wow.
But could you build this building today for $360,000? I doubt it.
No,
Doubt it.
not a chance.
And what changes were made to this building after the original structure was completed?
So in the research that I did for the 125th anniversary, I believe that the Carnegie Room and that whole side was originally open to the downstairs, and that this was the second floor until probably the 40s after the war. And they added a second floor, and they did it just in time because the Chapel Street School burned down, and they needed a place to house kindergarten, first and second grade, and this was where those classes were held. Where that post was a wall, and kindergarten was in that space, and first grade was here, and second grade was in the adjacent area. And that was the place where they went to school. Tish Dickinson went to school here until the South Side School was built.
did I.
So did you.
So did I.
Oh.
In fact, I think you can see the marks on the floor where the door
Yes,
swung open
yes,
on either side.
On either side. When we had the carpet ripped up in 2013 or 12, might have been 12, the peg marks from the French doors were still in the floor, and the person who refinished the floor said, "Oh, we can get rid of those." And I said, "No, please do not get rid of those. That's historic." So there's actually, in the floor, there's still the metal latch that you would put the doors into.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
We used to have our Girl Scout meetings in that
Did you?
room. And
I-
it was like this big.
The sad thing for me is that we have never been able to find any photographs of any of those classes that took place in this. We've asked, and no one has come forward with any, candid photos. We've seen a couple class photos of groups of kids, but no. Yeah, we just.
Well, Ann Seeley, Ann DeFrancisco, came here when she was, single.
Okay.
And she was our scout leader.
Really?
We used to have Girl
I
Scouts
did not
in
know
there.
that connection. Oh, that's wonderful.
She was on staff when the fire took place. She was on staff when the fire took place,
I was in
48,
that, I was in
48, 48 I think
that
it was.
fire.
Really?
I lost my trumpet and everything.
Aw. And Anne is a member of the Afternoon Writers Group, so we'll have to ask her. Maybe she has some photos.
Well, this building's been a special place for me for several reasons, and we just mentioned kindergarten. I started here in September of '52 with Mrs. Hines. Many of you remember Mrs. Hines. And then I was transferred up to the south side. And years later, my mother would kiddingly tell me that I was kicked out of the library because I was misbehaving. But there may be some truth to that, because I remember looking at my report card. I started school when I was 4. That's my excuse. And there were some behavior problems, apparently. But and then, through high school, I was in here to use the encyclopedias, of course. And when I was an Albany State student, I'd come home on weekends when I was doing term papers. And I would use the OB journals and the encyclopedias, but some of the other resource materials. So this has been a special, and it's been a special place for my grandkids. We have 6 grandchildren. The 2 youngest have been here for story hour. In fact, Sophia does a great impersonation of you.
Oh, wonderful.
She sits in that gliding rocking chair over there, surrounded by books, and she makes believe that the kids are all on the floor listening to Miss Liz.
That's great. I love it.
Now, what are your thoughts about the library's future?
Well, I think that this is a very strong institution and very much beloved by the community. Because it's become a community center, I just hope that that continues. It was very tough during the pandemic, not having people in this building, not being able to just share our experiences with one another because of the fear of illness. And I think that we've come back from that, and times have changed enough that we really realize the importance of gathering in groups of many sizes, small, medium, and large. And I think that this building has the opportunity to provide that for our community, whether it's a casual, gathering, or whether it's an exercise class or a lecture or a music program. I just hope all of that really continues as strong as it is right now. I hope that we continue to attract young people to the building with programs, because this is a great space for whatever age you are. And if you start young, then you'll love it from the beginning.
Now, your final day as director of the library is drawing near.
Is drawing near, yes.
What are your retirement plans? And I use the word retirement rather loosely. It's not a finality type
Right,
of thing.
no, of course not. Well, I hope to be a volunteer in this community in some capacity. I'm not sure exactly what yet, but I have thrown in my hat back to the beautification committee to see if I can help out in that realm. I do want to be a more involved grandmother to my grandchildren, who are 1 and 3, so that they know me and I get to know them. And I'm going to help out my very senior parents, who are approaching 90 years of age in Western New York. But I don't plan to move. We love living on the South Shore of Oneida Lake, and I think New York State is a beautiful state to live in, and we want to remain here. I hope that I can contribute as a volunteer in some way to the public library in my retirement.
Well, that deserves a round of applause. She's not going anywhere. In closing, I'm going to read this comment because I don't want to mess it up, because the words represent our heartfelt sentiments. And I think I speak on behalf of everybody that's in this room. We sincerely appreciate your incredible service to this community. We've been so very fortunate, we'll continue to be fortunate, to be the beneficiaries of your intellect, your administrative ability, your creativity, and your genuine care. So with that, best wishes for a happy and healthy, quote-unquote, retirement.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who took time out of their busy day to be here today. If anyone has a question or a comment about the library or about, and no one booed, that's great, that's terrific.
I love questions. That's what we always say to people who come in when we ask them, can I help you? And they hesitate, and we always just tell them, we love questions, don't hesitate to ask.
Or if anyone has a program that I've overlooked, because I've been back 19 years, but I missed a whole span of time there. If there's something that anyone would like to add, by all means, the cameras are rolling and Nancy.
They also sponsor knitting clubs and bridge clubs and book clubs. And currently Liz is running one right now. So there's a lot of other things. And I know it's been a puzzle you have to fit together to get all these organizations in here, right?
That's right.
But you've done an amazing job.
Thank you very much.
There have been some generous donors. I'm looking at Nancy right now. Her
Well,
name-
Nancy served on the library board for a decade.
Yeah.
And as I look around, I see Dee, and Dee used to come regularly. We did a program called Sandwich In that was started by Suzanne, where we would have a speaker during the lunch hour. And we would set out lunch meat and bread and some cookies, and people would throw a few dollars in the kitty and make a sandwich and sit down to enjoy a book review or someone from the community talking about their program or event. And Dee came to those quite regularly.
They're not doing it now.
They're not doing them now. No, they sort of fizzled out. Yes, might be something worth reviving.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm also thinking of the number of people that couldn't afford a computer, couldn't afford a laptop, couldn't afford an iPad.
Right.
And you'd see them in the basement here utilizing
That's
the
true.
facilities.
That's true. And we still have computers for people to use. And a lot of folks bring their own computers in and use them because there's Wi-Fi throughout the building. And we try to offer what the community wants. So please let us know what you're interested in. In addition to all the things that were mentioned by Nancy, we've started to be quite a place to exercise. So you can do yoga on Wednesdays, chair yoga on Wednesdays. You can do a bone builders program on Tuesday mornings, a program called Jerry Fit on Mondays and Thursdays. So who knows what else we'll be adding as time goes on.
Community center.
I think it's important to include in this wonderful interview the realization that we all have, which is this library is extraordinary on a lot of levels. Obviously, the resources are wonderful, the incredibly gifted and diverse programs that have been presented. But the welcome by every staff member is absolutely tangible. People come from communities all around Canastota. Why? Because they know when they're there, they'll be welcomed, they'll be helped, and they come back again. That is an extraordinary legacy that Liz has been really making possible. And do her staff thrive? You bet. So we have experts in all kinds of fields by the things that they know how to do best, and she says, go do it. It's been a remarkable coalition of your staff, Liz, and a real appreciation for the community that it serves.
Well, we all try to operate by the golden rule, which everybody learned in kindergarten. And I also feel it's very important when you have a job that you're spending 8 hours a day at, that you have some enjoyment from that job. So I've always wanted my staff to play to their strengths. So if they had a particular talent or ability or interest, I wanted to be able to give them the autonomy to be able to do that. And I think that has worked out really well for our community. I think that my staff has brought a lot of interesting ideas to the forefront that I may not have thought of, but that was of an interest to them and have really created great opportunities for other members of our community as well.
Any other questions, comments, or programs that any of you are familiar with that I
This
haven't
is going to
touched
be
upon?
hard for you to give up.
It's a very tough decision. I think I originally, when I took this job, I thought I will never want to leave. I will be here till I'm in the grave. Then once you have grandchildren, your perspective changes a little bit. And I have to say I'm intensely jealous of the in-laws that live 6 minutes from my grandchildren, and I'm 2.5 hours away. So that has really kind of changed and framed my viewpoint. I would like to have the opportunity to do a little bit more traveling, and I think that having a new person here is going to be wonderful for this community. I'm really happy to say that the board has selected a new director. His name is Bill Loveland, and he is currently the director of the Sherrill Public Library. I think you're really going to like him. He's a very much an engaging person. He's young. He's been working in libraries, I think probably since he was in high school. So he has a great love of libraries. I think it will be really good to have some new blood and some new ideas here. So I'm very happy to pass the baton to him.
Will this be the first time we've had a male director?
My predecessor, Matt Surratt, who was only here for about 6 months, so I believe he was the first. So let's hope that our second male lasts more than 6 months.
Liz,
Yes, Jan.
on behalf of everyone here, I do want to say we are going to miss you.
Oh, and I'm going to miss all of you. I hope I see all of you at library programs and out in the community at the grocery store or the canal cleanup or whatever.
You will.
Good, oh good.
Is your husband retired also?
He's not, and he's trying to figure out when he wants to retire. So maybe soon, we'll see.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.